January 1st, 2026, Buddha Dhamma, Chapter 11, 11.2, page 1060. Formal teaching on Sukha, happiness. What is Sukha? What is happiness? In order to develop happiness, it is important to know the meaning and the significance of Sukha, happiness. In brief, happiness is the fulfillment of one's desires and needs, or simply to a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. Note that this definition is not all-encompassing, but it covers a broad and basic range of meaning. It is a critical definition because it comprises of happiness that most people are confined to. Most people are not aware of this happiness greater than this. Wishing to take a shower or having taken a shower, one is happy. Wishing to eat and having eaten, one is happy. A child who wants to play and has finished playing is happy. This is the fulfillment of one's desire, a meaning of one's needs. As a matter of linguistics, it is important here to recognize that some branches of modern academic study make a distinction between desire and needs and give these terms different definition. In this context, I am using these two terms interchangeably with identical meanings. Here the focus is more on desire than on need. The need is a requirement, the necessity. By definition, Sukha, happiness, as the fulfillment of desire. It is also important to understand the nature of desire. The subject of desire is vast. Here, Gautama Buddha's principles tendent, all things are rooted in desire. Chanta mulaka sape dhamma. All things are rooted in desire. This means that all things human beings are engaged with are based on desire, have their origin in desire. Therefore, we must clearly understand the nature of desire. Given that happiness is the fulfillment of desire, it stands a reason that the development of happiness requires the development of desire. Otherwise, the development of happiness is unsuccessful. In sum, desire must be cultivated. Ambiguity and confusion about the nature of desire prevents people from seeing things clearly, from making headway, and from solving problems. This is true for all human activities, including formal study, moral conduct, and spiritual practice. If one fails to understand desire, one will not reach the essence of the matter at hand. The nature and the importance of desire. The technical terms for desire are rather complex. The relevant terms in the above quote by Gautama Buddha is chanta, wholesome enthusiasm, wholesome desire, which can be translated here as desire, wanting, or wish. The term chanta in the Pali language is essentially neutral. It can be used in positive or negative sense. It can be wholesome or unwholesome. Take the example of the terms such as the sense desire, kama chanta. Desire for renunciation, nekama chanta. Desire to consume, paribhoga chanta. The desire for the Dhamma. Dhamma chanta, etc. In the scriptures, the term chanta is a term divided into two kinds. Desire as craving, tanha chanta, the desire to obtain, to seize, to become, or to possess, or to destroy. Then we got katu kamyata chanta, the desire to wish to act. The desire to act, the wish to engage, the wish to create, the desire to improve, the desire to train, the desire to study, the desire to practice. Katu kamyata chanta. The former is negative and unwholesome, akusala chanta. The latter is positive and wholesome, kusala chanta. This is the easy way to understand, although these terms are rather long and unwieldy. Here's where things get complex. When teaching the Dhamma or when communicating the everyday circumstances, it's convenient to use the short, concise term, the results of when referring to negative, unwholesome desire. The single term is tanha. Is used, it's not necessary to say tanha chanta. When referring to positive, wholesome desire, the single term chanta is used. It is not necessary to say katu kamyata chanta, kusala chanta. Wholesome desire, dhamma chanta, sapawa chanta, desired for the truth. This is an example, easy to understand distinction. The word tanha implies a negative form of desire. The word chanta implies a positive form of desire. If this distinction is clearly understood, things get very confusing if they're not understood. For example, one may wonder, by assuming that chanta is a positive term, why is kama chanta, the sense desire, described as negative? Here, the neutral word patana. Patana is to wish, the desire, to combine with the two terms mentioned above, thus creating a similar distinction. Tanha patana, desire as craving, to wish to obtain, to wish to consume. Chanta patana, wholesome enthusiasm, wholesome desire, the wish to do good. Many people, especially Buddhists, encounter the word desire and immediately label it as bad or incorrect. They go on to encourage others to have desires which they see as dangerous and potentially destructive, both for the individual and spiritual development and for society. Others go to the opposite extreme to promote desire, encouraging people to acquire things and to increase wealth. Some even advocate greed, urging people to be rich, famous, and influential. They claim this hunger for things is required for society to develop. This is not the true development, however. Rather, it leads eventually to conflict and destruction. The best people can achieve by such efforts is to reach an unstable form of development, both politically and economically. These people represent two extremes, but they share the common factor of lacking of understanding. They do not understand the nature of desire and do not deal with it correctly. Therefore, it is essential to understand and to distinguish between different kinds of desire. This will lead to greater clarity. Having provided a rough outline of this distinction between the two kinds of desire, let us focus on some of their essence or essential characteristics. First, tanha, craving, desire catering to selfish needs, a wish to acquire something for oneself, the search of self-gratification, the wish to personally consume, obtain, become, and avoid something. And secondly, chanta, wholesome desire or enthusiasm, desire focusing on the inherent nature of the object involved, a search for the well-being or wellness, virtue, and completeness of an object. Take, for instance, the neutral surrounding of a monastery, a temple, a church. People enter the forested area of the monastery and see squirrels, secret squirrels, bouncing in the trees. Some people will rejoice in the charm and the nimbleness of these secret squirrels. They may think, what a delightful sight. These secret squirrels be healthy and strong. May this beautiful and refreshing place prosper. In this way, the desire for the completeness of the things in question. They possess a wholesome desire in regard for the secret squirrels. Other people will see the same secret squirrels and think these secret squirrels are plump and meaty. If only I could catch and cook one of them for my evening soup. Here, the desire for the self-gratification is an unwholesome form of desire based on craving. Another example is the consideration by a certain student who has finished their secondary education to go on and study medicine. Some students want to be doctors in order to get rich and gain honor and prestige. This is selfish, unwholesome form of desire. Another student wishes to study medicine because they want to be free from illness, to be healthy, to be free from affliction, to live safely and at ease. This desire for the completeness and this conditions at hand, in this case, the health of the nation's people, which is the express purpose of medical profession. This is a wholesome desire. When people's needs and desires are fulfilled, they experience happiness. For this reason, happiness among people varies according to their desires. When those who wish for the secret squirrels to be well and healthy see them bouncing through the trees, their desire is fulfilled and they become immediately experience happiness. Those who wish to eat the secret squirrels for the sake of their palates must hunt the secret squirrels, kill the secret squirrels, and cook the secret squirrels in order to prepare them as a meal. Only then would their desire be satisfied, and they will experience happiness. From a wider perspective, those people with wholesome desire, chanta, like to create the causes for prosperity, and those full of craving, tanha, simply wait to enjoy the fruits of prosperity. Those with wholesome desire are creators. Those with cravings are consumers. The former experience happiness in creating, the latter experience happiness in consuming. In a society with people of such different inclinations, as is too much to expect that the current of craving will dry up. On its own, or that the way of wholesome desire will prevail. The best one can do is to balance these two forces to prevent floods of craving from washing people into the abyss and to support fulfillment of wholesome desire. As long as there are people dedicated to fulfilling wholesome desire, human society can progress. Moreover, nevertheless, and in addition to supporting the spiritual development of people, simultaneously increasing the happiness for all. Delight and happiness. It was mentioned above that happiness is the fulfillment of needs, the satisfaction of desires. Another way of describing this fulfillment and satisfaction to say that desires have been stilled, similar to slacking thirst or alleviating hunger. When thirst or hunger is allayed, one experiences happiness. According to this definition, happiness is the abating of desire. Happiness is peace. In this process, before the mind reaches the peace constituting happiness, one may experience various forms of delight and pleasures. In particular, one may experience piti. Piti means delight, rapture, and bliss. Promote is before piti. Which is in Pali language is often paired with happiness, piti sukha, Discerning these various stages of delight and fulfillment provides a clearer understanding of how happiness is equal to peace. Moreover, one realizes the nature and value of such peace. In regard to these two aforementioned terms, the pleasure derived from obtaining a desired object is considered to be piti, while the actual enjoyment of experiencing that object is sukha. For example, a person who is traveling through a desert, who is parched and exhausted, will experience rapture when he sees water or hears from another the water is nearby. When he reaches the shade of the oasis and drinks from and bathes in the pools, he experiences happiness. The commentaries provides a example for clarification. A man has traveled a long distance through a barren wilderness. He is soaked in sweat, famished, and thirsty. At one point, he meets someone traveling the other way and asks whether there is any drinking water ahead. He is told not far ahead is a large pond with a wooded grove. When he hears this news, he is exceedingly glad and elated. When he walks further and sees the lotus petals, leaves, and stalks scattered on the path, he is even more delighted. He walks on and sees people with wet clothes and wet hair and hears the cries of forest chickens and peacocks. As he approaches the pond and sees the lush woodland and the lotus growing in the clear, clean water, he grows increasingly exuberant. Finally, he steps into water, providing a great sense of refreshment. The exhilaration he felt earlier is replaced by calm. He bathes and drinks to his heart's content, dispelling any anxiety, and he eats at the roots of the young leaves of the lotus until he is full. He then climbs onto the bank and lies down in the cool shade of a tree, caresses by a gentle breeze, and says to himself, such happiness. According to this example, one can see that the delight and elation of man experiences from the moment that he hears about the pond and the wooded grove until he sees it with his own eyes constitute piti, which is the preliminary joy and pleasure in the object about to be experienced. His bathing in the water, slacking his thirst, satisfying his hunger, and resting in the shades of the tree constitute sukha, actually experiencing the desired object. Piti is or has the characteristics of elation, euphoria, exuberance, exaltation, radiance, and suffusion, which are extremely positive qualities. Yet, however positive this delight and rapture may be, it is not yet complete. It has not yet reached its goal. In the end, it must include and culminate in happiness, which is precisely inner peace. If this delight is not yet peaceful, it is not yet complete, it reaches completion and perfection at peace, which is referred as happiness, sukha. In fact, a detailed and thorough analysis reveals that there is another important state of mind existing between piti and sukha. Above, we looked only at the gratification of desire, which is an aspect of acquisition. But a closer analysis also requires a look at the actual nature of desire. Desire possesses the attributes of compulsion and disturbance. Let me reiterate that. Desire, tanha, possesses the attributes, the characteristics of compulsion, and disturbance. If it becomes intense, it manifests as anxiety, stress, restlessness, and even turmoil. Despite the heightening of delight, piti, as one reaches the stage of fulfillment of desire, the anxiety, the stress, and the restlessness, which are attributes of desire and have an impact on the body and the mind, ease and subsides, Agitation is reduced. One becomes even and calm. This state is referred to as tranquility, passaddhi. Now, passaddhi means tranquility in the direct antecedent to happiness, sukha. Therefore, when making a more detailed distinction, the Tipitaka describes the order of possession as piti, passaddhi, sukha. Desire based on cravings is full of agitation, anxiety, and stress because it rests on the foundation of delusion. It is fed by the attachment of the sense of self. Desire based on wholesome enthusiasm, chanta, however, is naturally accompanied by panya, wisdom, which prevents or corrects these material afflictions. Note that besides a stilling of desire by way of gratification, there is also stilling of desire by way of non-gratification, which is the opposite form of intentional action. One must be careful, though. If one tries to still desire by obstructing, resisting, suppressing, or controlling it, the repercussions are even more serious than when seeking gratification. The agitation and turmoil increases, and one may vent one's frustration or explode, causing extra suffering to oneself and endangering others. This then leads to retaliation or reprisals. The inner suppression is merely a form of coercion. It is not true peace. At the beginning of spiritual practice, the awareness of training helps in part to deal with desire. Although to some degree one may be acting against one's will and choosing a path of non-gratification, the benefits of training, including a feeling of self-development and a joy in having tested one's strength and resolve. There are additional tools for working with desire. First, to empower wholesome mental quality, one ensures the wholesome desire, chanta, which longs for knowledge, is stronger than craving, tanha, which longs for indulgence. Such wholesome desire, for instance, prevents one from skipping work in order to go off drinking with one's friends. Secondly, negative qualities are replaced with positive qualities. For example, Simon Paul or Simon Peter covets John's money and wants to steal it. But he considers how difficult it is for John to acquire the money. Jonathan has enough problems. Why create more for him? This thought gives rise to compassion, and the craving dries up and is stilled. In respect to wisdom, take, for example, a person who sees gold for the sale of an extreme cheap piece or cheap price. His eyes widen and he desires this gold. But once he discovers that the gold is fake, his desire vanishes instantly. This recognition, however, is only basic or counterfeit, pseudo form of wisdom. It deals with only immediate problems. Disciples endowed with genuine wisdom discern the gold, silver, and jewels. Indeed, all material wealth does not make up the true purpose of life. Material wealth does not truly belong to anyone if it's unable to provide true happiness or distinction in one's life. Both with the wealth itself and all living beings are subject to the law of nature, of impermanence, dukkha, and non-self. To benefit from the material things, one must gain insight to the true nature and so that they do not create harm. One has opened oneself up to true freedom and happiness. These things can be renounced without hesitation. Such wisdom prevents craving from gaining any footing and leads to true peace. Regardless of whether one stills desires by way of gratification or one abstains from gratifying unhealthy desire by empowering wholesome qualities and applying wisdom, the resultant stillness and peace, santi, itself constitute happiness. Happiness is peace. There's dual pathways to happiness. Most people are endowed with a starting capital of both craving and wholesome enthusiasm. those leaders in society, for those who act as mentors, kaya na mita, virtuous friends, should be understanding the fact that help others to both promote wholesome desire and to regulate and subdue craving. At the very least, people should prevent the undercurrent of craving and become an overwhelming force. In regard to basic wholesome desire, chanta, most people wish for their environment to be well ordered, tidy, and clean. When they encounter a beautiful natural setting, they rejoice. They want their surroundings to be in a state of completeness. They want people, animals, trees, and plants to be healthy and vibrant. In the same vein, the same way, people want their own bodies to be healthy, strong, and clean, to exist in a state of completeness. These are useful examples for distinguishing between chanta and tanha. At the same time, most people wish to gratify their desire by way of contact with the pleasing and agreeable forms, fragrances, sound, tastes, and tactile objects. And these are collectively referred to as material objects, amisa, a sense object, kama. Because the sense objects rely on a coarse form of contact and often involve strong stimulation, they can be very seductive. Developing a thorough understanding so as not to be led astray by these enticements requires repeated emphasis. Let us compare these two kinds of desire in more depth. Chanta, wholesome desire, as mentioned above, begins with a pleasure and contentment in seeing things exist in a state of well-being and completeness. If the object or person in question is not yet at the state of completeness or the state of only partial completeness, one wishes to act in order to fulfill this completeness. It is at the stage of wanting to act that one reaches the true essence of chanta, which is referred as the desire to wish to act. Katu kamyata chanta. The wholesome form of desire, craving, on the other hand, manifests as a lust for the five senses. To achieve gratification by way of consuming things. Craving is the desire for consumption. There is a desire to obtain, to acquire solely for one's own benefit. Here is where a critical distinction between these two kinds of desire is evident. When craving arises, it is by definition accompanied by presumed owner, desire, a consumer, by someone who acquires, seizes, and consumes, who wants to get things for the sake of this so-called owner or consumer. This is the birth of self, of the sense of self. Wholesome enthusiasm functions differently. It is accompanied by a delight and satisfaction in witnessing the goodness and completeness of that an object. This delight arises without needing to do anything. If the object is not yet at a state of completeness, there is a desire to reach this state. This desire for completeness generates another level of desire, which is to wish to act to bring about completeness. In this case, that one does not know how to bring about such completeness. The natural, casual, or causal process advocates how to respond. The desire for completeness and the inquiry into how to bring this about leads to the desire for knowledge, a yearning to understand. The above explanations indicate the breadth of meaning of the term chanta. First, there is the delight in the goodness, beauty, and completeness of an object or a person. Second, there is a wish for this thing or person to remain healthy, complete, or happy. Third, in the case that the thing or a person has not yet reached such a state of completion, there is a wish to act in order to help bring about this completion. And fourth, there is the desire to gain the necessary knowledge required to help bring about completion. The first distinction here is that wholesome enthusiasm wishes for something to exist in a neutral state of fulfillment and completion. When one encounters something or someone in the state of completion, one immediately experiences happiness and satisfaction. When one delights in the beauty of nature, this differs from tanha, craving, which must wait for gratification until an object can be consumed. Another essential distinction is that throughout the process of wholesome enthusiasm, there's the desire without birth of one who desires, or the birth of an agent who must act, that differ from the process of craving, which requires a sense of self, of a consumer, of an owner, a controller. If while engaging with something by the way of wholesome enthusiasm, a fit sense of identity arises, this indicates that the defilements, the kalesas, associated with self-view have infiltrated the mind. A subtle defilement that tends to arise in the context of conceit, mana, the wish for self-importance. The essence for chanta is the desire to act. For this reason, the term defined katu kamyata chanta is the desire to wish to act. A frequent definition of chanta is chandoti kamyatu kamyata chanto. Chanta is the aspiration expressed as the desire to act. In order for something to reach a state of virtue or completion, the point needs to be reiterated because it's the starting point of human spiritual development. If we were endowed with wholesome enthusiasm, chanta, we will rejoice and feel at ease when we see that our house, our monastery is clean and tidy. If it is dirty or messy, we will want to clean it. We will grab a broom and sweep the floor or the ground. If we do not know how to sweep, we will want to learn and will study the best methods for sweeping. We will become experts at sweeping and experiencing joy while sweeping. This is an example of spiritual training and how wholesome enthusiasm is the starting point of spiritual development. With craving, tanha, however, this process of training does not begin. When craving arises, one wishes to obtain something in order to consume it. With consumption, the process ends. One has no wish to improve oneself. Wholesome desire in relation to others. So far, the discussion on desire has focused on works and activities as well as touching upon the relationship with one's environment. For this discussion to be complete, however, one must look at wholesome desire in relation to other human beings. As mentioned above, chanda, wholesome desire, is a wish for all things to exist in a state of goodness and completion. This desire extends also to sentient beings. This well-wishing towards all beings, beginning with one's human companions, is the desire for others to be well, to flourish, to be healthy and strong, and to experience joy and happiness. Interaction with other human beings is a vital part of people's lives. Likewise, wholesome desire in relation to other human beings, and indeed to all beings, hold a special significance in people's lives. This well-wishing or desire for goodness in relation to other peoples and other living creatures have exceptional attributes, distinct from the desire for inanimate things to reach a state of wellness and completion. Take the example, there are several terms used to represent chanta in this context. Depending on specific circumstances, instead of using them in terms of chanta, to designate wholesome desire, vice versa. Other human beings, the following four terms are used: love and kindness, metta. Under normal circumstances, if one has wholesome desires, a sense of well-wishing towards others, one wants them to have a bright complexion, be physically healthy, and experience happiness. This is basic initial form of well-wishing. It is desire to focus on another person or living creature. It is not tied up with personal concerns. Then we have karuna, compassion. If one encounters another person or living creature, one who is unhealthy, anguished, troubled, or who has fallen on bad times, one wishes for him or her to be free from suffering, this destitution, misery, and illness. Then we have appreciative joy, mudita. If another person prospers, a child grows up to blossom and thrive, someone is healthy, physically beautiful, and attractive, someone reaches some form of true success, etc., one rejoices in his or her accomplishment. And finally, we have equanimity, upeka. In some circumstances, another person is able to take self-responsibility or or else it is suitable and appropriate for him or her to take such responsibility. In such cases, one should allow him or her to remain independent without interference. Two parents may be watching their toddler learn how to walk, wishing for the child to grow and succeed. They watch from a distance without intruding. They do not get caught up with worry and constantly cradle the child. The desire here is the state of well-being, is the desire for people's success, goodness, and rectitude. One wishes for them to abide in uprightness, correctness, and safety, for them to exist in truth and righteousness, to enable one refrains in these circumstances from interfering. All these four is called the Brahma Viharas, the four Brahma Viharas. Chanda, wholesome desire, is the catalyst for these four mind states. In other words, Chanda, wholesome desire, expresses itself in four different contexts, Brahma Viharas. The first one is a sense of well-wishing when people abide in a normal state of happiness, metta. The second one is a sense of well-wishing when people fall on hard times and wish them to be released from suffering and arrive at a state of well-being, karuna. The third one is a sense of well-wishing when people reach success and accomplishment, a wish for them to achieve even greater prosperity, mudita. And the fourth, Brahma Vihara, is a sense of well-wishing when people have the opportunity to exercise self-responsibility, a wish for them to abide in integrity, uprightness, security, and righteousness. That's upekha. Most people only consider the first three kinds of well-wishing, but this is insignificant. But these three factors are still confined to the domain of feeling, vedana. Although these feelings, vedana, sentiments, or emotion, are exalted and highly cultivated, they are not yet complete. Only to the fourth factor brings completion. In brief, if people only possess wholesome sentiments, no matter how elevated or sublime these may be, this is inadequate. These sentiments fulfill potential attributes, but they are not yet linked with satcha, truth, with the Dhamma, with the law. Although those people are good, they may not yet be correct to realize the truth. To reach the true correctness, to dispel dukkha, suffering, and to realize the perfect happiness, sukha, one must possess knowledge, nana. Technically speaking, completing the cultivation of sita, the mind, is insignificant. Factors of the mind or the heart cannot themselves bring about liberation. One must complete the cultivation of wisdom, which is the decisive factor for liberation and mental perfection. The first three forms of well-wishing are confined to the factors of the mind. The fourth factor involves wisdom, which prompts true application of the mind and leads to liberation. Although people may possess positive emotions, they need wisdom to regulate, refine, and elevate these emotions. The fourth factor of equanimity constitutes the link with wisdom. If people lack wisdom, they are unable to solve life's problems, even if they are possessed with virtues and wholesome sentiments. They may apply these incorrectly and perform unskillful action. A thief steals $2,000. From one perspective, he has reached success. He has obtained money and experiences some happiness. How should one respond to this? In accord with the factor of appreciative joy, one rejoices in his happiness. Yet this is incorrect. Here one runs counter to true Dhamma practice by getting stuck on the level of emotion. Although the emotion are positive, they may lead to trouble. People may then condone stealing, causing all sorts of problems for society. Here is where wisdom brings about an integration and balance of the mind. The wish here, referring to the equanimity, upekha, is for the other peoples to possess rectitude and correctness. Equanimity as an expression of wholesome desire, chanta, is the wishing for others to be well and complete. In order to reach completion, people must align themselves with the law of Dhamma, with righteousness. One abides in the state of equanimity in order to allow correctness and righteousness to proceed according to the laws of nature. The first three factors of kindness, compassion, and appreciative joy protects the individual. The fourth factor is equanimity. The Brahma Viharas also safeguards the truth. If someone else commits or breaches the truth, then one should uphold and protect the truth, uphold justice and prosperity. Fulfillment is reached with equanimity, which is an emotion corrected by wisdom. Equanimity acts as the balance to the four divine abidings, the Brahma Viharas. According to the Buddhist teaching, these four factors are indeed divine forces. That is, they represent Brahma, the highest divinity, and protect the world.